Nathan narrowed his eyes, his expression skeptical. You're saying we let her run her mouth and make a fool of herself just to see what she's up to? Rita nodded. Exactly. It's clear she's been sent here for a reason, and if we force her out now, we might lose the opportunity to uncover the truth. Let her stay, for now. But we'll keep a close eye on her and whoever is pulling the strings. Richard exhaled heavily, his displeasure still evident. Fine, he said reluctantly. But I'm doing this for you, Rita. The moment she crosses a line, she'll have to answer to us, Rita finished, her voice firm. Trust me, Papa. We'll handle this. Nathan exchanged a glance with their father, then sighed. All right, I'll go along with this, for now. But if they think they can waltz in here and take over, they're in for a rude awakening. Rita gave them a small smile before turning her attention back to the front of the room, where Lynette and Anita were now laughing and chatting with a small group of employees who had no idea of the audacity unfolding. To the uninformed, it seemed like a perfectly ordinary introduction to a new executive, a deliberate facade that would need to be dismantled piece by piece. Let's not give them the satisfaction of seeing us riled up, Rita suggested quietly. We'll leave early, make it seem like we're dismissing this as nothing more than noise. If they think we don't see them as a threat, they might get careless. Richard reluctantly agreed, though his discontent was still visible. Very well, he muttered. But mark my words, this Anita won't last long. As the event unfolded, Rita, Nathan, and their father subtly made their exit, their departure as composed as it was deliberate. Lynette watched them go, her smug smile only growing wider. To her, the morose retreat signified victory, a sign that her audacious entrance had cowed them into silence. She turned to Anita with an approving nod, clearly proud of her orchestrated fantasy. Meanwhile, Rita led her family into the quiet sanctuary of Nathan's office. Once the door was closed, the mask of calm confidence slipped, revealing the calculating mind at work behind her composed demeanor. I'll start digging, Nathan offered immediately, his voice edged with determination. Someone is definitely backing Anita. No one makes a move like this without leverage, or orders. We need to figure out who it is. Richard nodded, his expression dark. Whoever it is clearly doesn't understand who they're dealing with. Rita held up a hand, her tone measured. Let's not underestimate them. Whoever orchestrated this has confidence and resources. If we overplay our hand, we could lose the chance to expose them for good. Her father studied her for a moment, pride flickering in his eyes despite his frustration. You're sharper than I give you credit for, he admitted. Fine. We'll do it your way, for now. Nathan smirked slightly, though his own determination was no less fierce. They won't know what hit them, he promised. Anita and Lynette think they're running the show, but the real game is only just beginning. As they began strategizing their next steps, Rita couldn't help but feel a surge of resolve. Lynette and Anita had underestimated her, just as so many others had before. But this time, Rita wasn't just fighting for herself, she was protecting her family's legacy. And she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. The hum of chatter filled the grand hall as Lynette and Anita reveled in their apparent triumph. The party, intended as a gathering for the company's employees and executives, had transformed under their influence into a self-serving spectacle. Lynette, with her air of faux sophistication, held court at the center of the room while Anita lingered close by, nodding in agreement with every word Lynette uttered. Their bold claims and ostentatious posturing drew the attention of the more gullible employees, who saw an opportunity to curry favor with what they believed was emerging power. Ignorant of the true hierarchy, they cozied up to Lynette and Anita with exaggerated compliments and shameless flattery. "Oh, Miss Lynette," gushed one employee, a middle manager from accounting. "You and Anita have such a commanding presence. It's refreshing to see leaders like you stepping in to bring fresh perspectives to the company." Lynette smirked, clearly feeding off the adoration. "Why, thank you," she said, her tone dripping with false humility. "It's about time someone with vision stepped up to the plate. The company needs strong, innovative minds, don't you agree, Anita?" "Absolutely," Anita chimed in, her voice smooth yet insincere. "We're here to shake things up for the better." Nearby, a group of junior employees whispered among themselves, their eyes occasionally darting toward Lynette and Anita. The mysterious newcomer's boldness and confidence made an impression on the impressionable crowd, who assumed their authority was legitimate. But not everyone in the room was fooled. The seasoned executives, who had spent decades building the company's reputation and success, watched the unfolding scene with barely concealed irritation. Among them was Mr. Donahue, the head of operations, a no-nonsense man whose reputation for integrity and loyalty to the Moreau family was well known. As Donahue sipped his whiskey, he leaned toward Mrs. Beaumont, the company's head of human resources, and muttered, "This is absurd. Who do they think they are, parading around like they own the place?" Mrs. Beaumont, a sharp-eyed woman with an air of quiet authority, nodded in agreement. "They're overplaying their hand," she said. "And the worst part is watching these fools grovel at their feet." Across the room, Lynette and Anita's increasingly bold behavior began to spark tension. At one point, Lynette turned her attention to Mr. Harrington, the senior vice president of finance. Oblivious to his importance within the company, she waved him over with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "You there," Lynette called, her tone patronizing. "You seem important enough. Tell me, what does your department even do for this company?" Harrington's brow furrowed, and his lips pressed into a thin line. "I oversee the company's financial operations," he replied coolly. "Every department's success depends on our work." Lynette scoffed, her ignorance on full display. "Oh, numbers. How fascinating," she said, her sarcasm evident. "But don't you think the company could benefit from some creative restructuring? Anita and I have some ideas." Harrington's patience wore thin, and his gaze hardened. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure of seeing your credentials," he said pointedly. "What experience do you bring to the table?" The tension in the air was palpable as Lynette's cheeks flushed slightly. "Well, I don't need credentials to see that things could be improved," she retorted defensively. "Sometimes, it takes an outside perspective to bring about change." Anita chimed in, sensing her ally's discomfort. "Exactly. Fresh perspectives are what this company needs, not the same tired routines." The exchange caught the attention of several other executives, who exchanged knowing glances. Meanwhile, the younger employees who had cozied up to Lynette and Anita began to fidget, realizing the power dynamic wasn't what they'd assumed. The tipping point came when Lynette, emboldened by the attention she'd garnered, approached Richard Moreau's longtime personal assistant, Helen. Lynette's condescending tone made Helen stiffen. "You must be the one who keeps everything running around here," Lynette said, her smile thin. "I might have some tasks for you soon. After all, someone needs to handle the logistics for my ideas." Helen, a woman known for her sharp wit and unyielding loyalty to the Moreaus, raised an eyebrow. "I take my orders directly from Mr. Moreau," she said evenly. If you have any suggestions, I suggest you take them up with him first. Lynette waved a dismissive hand. Oh, I'm sure he won't mind. Times are changing, and it's about time this company started adapting. Helen's eyes narrowed, but she kept her composure. We'll see about that. The gathering grew increasingly tense as Lynette and Anita's antics offended more senior staff members. The calculated plan to expose their motives had begun to bear fruit. Rita, watching from a distance with her father and brother, couldn't suppress a small smile. They're digging their own graves, Nathan muttered, his voice low. Rita nodded, her gaze steady. Let them. The deeper they dig, the easier it will be to bring everything to light. As the evening wore on, the true nature of the power struggle became evident to those paying attention. Lynette and Anita's desperate grasp for validation began to unravel, their arrogance alienating the very people they sought to control. When the party finally began to wind down, the whispers of dissent were louder than ever. The senior executives, once silent observers, had seen enough. Lynette and Anita's fantasy was crumbling, and the Moreaus were ready to deliver the final blow. The following day, Lynette and Anita arrived at the company in their usual flawless style, dressed to impress, with impeccable makeup and hair. They had spent the night strategizing their arrival, determined to set the tone for how they would be treated from then on. As they stepped through the glass doors of the company lobby, heads turned. The employees, who had only heard rumors about Anita's new role and Lynette's possible involvement, were taken aback. The office, usually buzzing with a casual energy, fell into an almost hushed atmosphere as they walked in, both of them exuding an air of superiority and power. Anita, who had always been keenly aware of the importance of first impressions, took a slow, deliberate walk towards the elevator, her heels clicking on the polished floor with each step. Lynette, following close behind, matched her pace perfectly, her eyes scanning the room as if measuring each employee's worth. The receptionist, who had been busy answering the phone, looked up and froze when she saw the two women. She quickly stood up, adjusting her glasses as if to compose herself. "Good morning, Ms. Gray, Ms. Lynette," she said, voice slightly trembling but trying to sound as professional as possible. Anita gave her a tight smile, nodding. "We'll be needing a full report on the current status of the company. Make sure it's on my desk by the end of the day. I expect nothing less than perfection." Lynette gave the receptionist a cold glance, making sure her presence was known. "And if there's anything less than exceptional from now on, you'll be hearing from me personally." The receptionist nodded, clearly feeling the pressure building. "Of course, Miss Gray. I'll make sure everything is prepared." As they made their way to the elevator, the employees exchanged uncertain glances. Word had already begun to spread that things were about to change, but no one had anticipated just how abrupt and commanding Lynette and Anita would be. They arrived at the executive floor with a sense of entitlement that commanded immediate respect, their every move deliberate. When the elevator doors opened, the scene before them was one of utter silence. The usually busy and noisy workspace had grown tense, everyone aware that the women now had the power to reshape everything. Anita took her place at the head of the conference table, while Lynette stood by her side, arms crossed in an air of superiority. It was clear that this was no longer just a business decision, they were here to demand control and make their presence known. "Let's begin," Anita said, her voice smooth but firm. "I want to know exactly how things have been running around here. What are the biggest issues? What needs fixing? I'm not here for excuses, I want results." Lynette leaned forward slightly, adding her own touch of intimidation. "And make sure you're telling us the truth. We won't tolerate lies or mediocrity. The employees, sitting stiffly at the table, shared uneasy looks but reluctantly began to speak up. Each report was met with approval or disapproval, depending on how well it met Anita's expectations. She nodded, taking mental notes of what needed improvement, and Lynette scrutinized every word, ensuring that no one was trying to hide the truth. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The once relaxed workplace was now under the firm control of two women who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. As they left the meeting room, Lynette turned to Anita with a smile. "We're off to a good start." Anita's expression softened just for a moment. "It's only the beginning, Lynette. We'll have them all exactly where we want them." The atmosphere in the office had just begun to settle after Anita and Lynette's intense meeting, but the sudden appearance of Rita from the general manager's office immediately grabbed everyone's attention. She was a striking woman, with an air of confidence that was often the subject of whispers behind her back. Her appearance only added fuel to the gossip that had been circulating about her, the rumors that she was playing a dangerous game with some of the men in the company. As Rita stepped out, she caught sight of Lynette, and an unsettling tension filled the air. Lynette's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a scornful sneer. She could barely hold back the hatred that bubbled up inside her when she saw Rita. Rita was a woman who had always somehow gotten under her skin, and the idea that she might be trying to charm or manipulate the very people Lynette sought to control was infuriating. Before anyone could breathe, Lynette snapped, her voice cutting through the office like a knife. "Ah, look who decided to show up." Lynette's voice was loud, laced with venom. Everyone in the office froze, sensing that trouble was coming. Rita, the woman who thinks she can seduce her way to the top. Rita, who had been calmly walking towards the elevator, stopped dead in her tracks. Her face flushed slightly, but she kept her composure, not wanting to give Lynette the satisfaction of seeing her rattle. "What's your problem, Lynette?" Rita said, trying to keep her tone neutral, though there was an edge of warning in her voice. Anita, watching the confrontation unfold, leaned against the wall with a slight smirk. She wasn't about to stop Lynette, if anything, she was interested in how this would play out. Lynette, on the other hand, seemed to be in full attack mode. "Oh, I think you know what my problem is, Rita," Lynette snapped. "You've been here long enough to know that the only reason you're still in this company is because you've been using men. That's right, you've got quite the reputation, haven't you?" Rita's face tightened, but she refused to let Lynette see her vulnerability. "What the hell are you talking about?" Rita asked, her voice a little louder now, though still controlled. "I'm not the one making baseless accusations, Lynette." But Lynette wasn't done. She pushed forward, her voice booming, ensuring everyone in the office could hear her. "Oh, don't pretend you don't know. I hear everything. It's no surprise you're so eager to climb the ladder now that your poor husband left you. Tell me, Rita, how does it feel to be abandoned for someone younger and prettier? I bet that's why you're here now, isn't it? Trying to charm and seduce every man in this office to get what you want. Too bad it's not working." A stunned silence hung in the air as Lynette's words sank in. Rita's eyes widened with disbelief, her pulse quickening. "Are you insane?" Rita shouted, stepping forward, her face red with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I think I do," Lynette replied smoothly, with a wicked smile curling at her lips. "I've been hearing the whispers, Rita. Everyone knows you're just trying to latch onto whatever men will give you the attention you crave. Maybe you should stop playing the victim and face the reality of what you've become." A washed-up woman trying to win affection from the wrong places. Rita's hands balled into fists, and for a moment, it seemed like she was going to lose her cool. But instead, she took a deep breath, gathering her strength. She turned to face the room of employees who were all watching, some with pity, some with amusement, and some with embarrassment. "Let me remind you, Lynette," Rita began, her voice low but dangerous, "that I don't need to rely on anyone but myself to succeed. Unlike you, I don't have to play petty games or tear other women down to get ahead." The words were like a slap in Lynette's face. She recoiled slightly but quickly regained her composure. She wasn't going to let Rita get the last word. "You're nothing but a pathetic, lonely woman trying to fill the void with whatever validation you can find," Lynette spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "But we all know who you really are behind the fake smile. A woman desperate for attention." There was a long pause, and then Rita, with her usual poise, squared her shoulders and took a step toward Lynette, looking directly into her eyes. "You can keep trying to tear me down, Lynette, but you'll never break me. I'm stronger than you think." Anita, sensing that this confrontation could spiral further, finally stepped in, her tone sharp and cold. "Enough. We're here to make sure this company succeeds. Let's focus on that, shall we?" Rita's patience had worn thin, the sting of Lynette's insults festering deep inside her. She had been calm, composed, and controlled until now, but something snapped. Her hand moved faster than she could think, and with a sharp, resounding crack, her palm collided with Lynette's cheek. The sound of the slap echoed through the office, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Lynette's head jerked to the side, her hair flying with the force of the blow. For a moment, she was frozen, her eyes wide in shock, as if she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. The employees standing around them watched in disbelief, some whispering to each other in hushed tones while others simply stood there, too stunned to move. Lynette's hand instinctively went to her face, her fingers tracing the spot where the slap had landed, and then, with a growl of fury, she snapped. "You bitch," she yelled, her voice venomous. Without thinking, Lynette lunged at Rita, shoving her hard in the chest. The force of the push sent Rita stumbling back, but she quickly regained her balance, her eyes flashing with anger. Before Rita could say a word, Lynette was on her again, grabbing a fistful of her hair. The two women were now in a full-on struggle, tugging, pulling, and tearing at each other. "You'll regret this," Lynette hissed, her nails digging into Rita's scalp. Rita retaliated, her fists flying in a blur as she punched Lynette in the stomach, causing her to gasp in pain. The office erupted in chaos. The employees scrambled to the edges of the room, some of them cheering the fight on, while others stood frozen in shock. A few brave souls tried to step forward to separate the two, but no one dared get too close. Lynette's lipstick smeared across her face as she swung wildly at Rita, but Rita ducked and retaliated with a knee to Lynette's gut, knocking the wind out of her. Lynette gasped, her hands clutching her stomach, but before she could recover, Rita grabbed a stack of papers from the desk and hurled them at her face. "Stop," someone shouted from the crowd, but their voice was lost in the mayhem. The fight was now in full swing, with the two women struggling to get the upper hand. Lynette, her face flushed with rage, pushed Rita back with all her strength, sending her crashing into the desk. Papers flew into the air, and the sound of a coffee cup smashing against the floor filled the room. "You think you're better than me?" Lynette screamed, her voice rising with each word. "You're just a desperate woman trying to get attention. Nothing more than a cheap trick." Rita, now seething with anger, pulled herself up, her face a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You don't know a damn thing about me, Lynette." She swung again, but this time, her fist landed squarely against Lynette's jaw. The force of the punch sent Lynette stumbling backward, crashing into a chair, but she quickly recovered, a wild look in her eyes. The employees watched, some too horrified to intervene, others muttering among themselves, unsure whether they should try to stop the fight or let it play out. One of the men, James, stepped forward hesitantly, his face tense with concern. "Enough," he shouted, trying to grab Rita's arm, but she shook him off with a violent jerk. "Stay out of this, James," she snapped, her voice trembling with fury. Lynette, now desperate, lunged forward once again, but Rita was faster. With a swift move, she grabbed Lynette by the wrist and twisted it, sending her crashing to the floor. Lynette let out a shocked scream as she fell, landing hard on her back, the breath knocked out of her. Rita stood over her, chest heaving, her face flushed with adrenaline. "You want to keep going?" Rita spat, her voice low and filled with venom. "Because I'm not done with you." Lynette's eyes burned with hatred as she slowly pushed herself up from the floor, her hand going to her bruised wrist. "You'll pay for this, Rita," she hissed, her voice a menacing promise. At that moment, the general manager stormed into the room, his face dark with anger. His eyes darted from the two women to the chaos around him, and for a second, he said nothing. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice booming. The office fell into an eerie silence as all eyes turned to him. Rita's breath came in ragged gasps, and Lynette glared up at him, her chest heaving. Both women were panting, their clothes disheveled, their faces flushed with rage. "It's nothing," Lynette snarled, standing up and brushing herself off. "Just a little misunderstanding." Rita stood still, not saying a word, but the fire in her eyes was undeniable. The general manager wasn't convinced. His gaze shifted between them, and the tension in the room thickened. "This will be reported," he said, his tone cold. "Both of you, in my office, now." The employees, still in shock, exchanged uneasy glances as Lynette and Rita were both forced to march toward the general manager's office, their pride and anger palpable. As the door closed behind them, the office fell into a silence that could only be broken by the whispers of what had just happened. Just as the door to the manager's office clicked shut behind them, Lynette made her move. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor as she walked with an undeniable confidence toward the manager's desk. She didn't waste a second, her every step calculated to command attention. She could already feel the manager's tension from the earlier chaos, and she knew just how to manipulate it. The manager stood by his desk, arms folded, his face darkened by the altercation in the hallway. The irritation in his eyes was clear, but Lynette, with her practiced poise, wasted no time in disarming him. "You think you can just come in here and cause all that trouble?" he asked, his tone clipped and stern, though his voice faltered a little under the weight of her presence. Lynette didn't respond immediately, instead, taking a slow step forward, lowering her body ever so slightly. Her eyes locked on his, and her gaze didn't waver, like she was drawing him in. "I think you know exactly why I'm here," she purred, her voice smooth and seductive. Her lips curled into a subtle but confident smile, and she stepped closer. "You don't want someone like her," she flicked her head back toward the door as if referring to Rita without actually saying her name, "to keep stirring up trouble around here, do you?" The manager's expression softened for just a second. The tension in his shoulders started to ease as he followed her every move. Lynette, knowing the power of her presence, didn't waste the opportunity. Her hand, delicate and purposeful, brushed against the edge of his desk, and she let her fingers linger just long enough for him to notice. "You're in charge here," she whispered, leaning in slightly. "And I know you have a lot of control. You don't have to tolerate that kind of behavior." The manager's resistance crumbled. His eyes followed the graceful sway of her movements, and before he knew it, he was leaning toward her, a hint of admiration, and more, beginning to stir in him. Lynette's smile grew, a glimmer of victory flashing in her eyes. She could tell she had him right where she wanted him. "I'm sure you can make sure she understands who's really in charge around here," she murmured, her breath warm against his ear. "If you just help me out." The manager swallowed hard, the pressure of the situation beginning to cloud his judgment. His professional demeanor was vanishing, and he found himself nodding in agreement. Yeah, I'll make sure she knows her place," he muttered, almost to himself. Lynette straightened up, a satisfied glint in her eye. She took a deliberate step back, casually glancing at her reflection in the glass of his office window. It was a silent celebration. She had done it. She had made her move, and the manager was falling for it, completely. Just then, the office door opened with a quiet creak. The manager paused, catching himself before exiting. He glanced at Lynette once more, a flicker of something darker passing between them. Without another word, he walked out of the office, a few steps ahead of Lynette. They moved down the hallway together, their body language intimate, something only the sharpest of observers would notice. Rita, having been standing nearby, saw them exit the office, and her heart sank. Rita froze, her eyes darting between the manager and Lynette. She hadn't expected this, hadn't seen it coming. She felt a pang of humiliation as she watched the manager walk so closely with Lynette, his posture completely different from the cold demeanor he had shown earlier. Lynette's victory was clear, and Rita couldn't help but feel a wave of resentment welling up inside her. Rita stood there, stunned, watching the pair walk away. Lynette had clearly won. And Rita had no idea what had just happened, but she knew that she had lost, at least for now. As Lynette brushed past her, her voice, laced with satisfaction, sliced through the air. "You should learn how to handle things with a little more finesse, Rita. Not everyone likes to be messy about their power plays." Rita opened her mouth, but no words came out. The anger, the shock, it all mixed in her chest, but she couldn't respond. Not yet. Lynette had won this round, and Rita could only stand there, watching the aftermath unfold.